Welcome to the Transform My Dance Studio podcast, the only podcast dedicated to helping you grow your dance studio while reclaiming your life. It's Clint Salzer here, the CEO and founder of the Dance Studio Owners Association. And for the next 8 weeks, we're bringing you a very special series of podcast episodes with dance studio owners Jane Grech and Melanie Gard, who are also part of our Inner Circle program. Over these next 8 episodes, Jane and Mel will be sharing their own challenges, successes, experiences, and advice as dance studio owners. Welcome to this very special podcast event at the Barre with Jane and Mel. I hope you enjoy it.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of At the Barre, a mini podcast for dance studio owners by studio owners. My name's Jane Grech and I'm joined by my very good friend and fellow dance studio owner, Melanie Gard. Welcome, Melanie.
Thanks, Jane. I'm really excited to be here.
Me too. It's very exciting. You and I up to mischief.
Always.
So, before we kind of dive right in, this is our first episode, so we should perhaps introduce why we thought this type of discussion might work. And originally, I'm going to throw it over to you because originally you came to me and pitched this idea, and I'm happy to be involved with anything that you're involved in. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. But share your thoughts behind what your intention is.
Well, first of all, I always really enjoy talking to you, and so it's a good way of making that happen every week. So I guess that was one of the things. But I guess I love podcasts. I love listening to podcasts, and there is a little bit out there at the moment for studio owners. But I felt like there was a bit of a gap in studio owners actually talking about the day-to-day running, the nuts and bolts. What are the issues that we face? And I find that you and I always have really great conversations about that. So it just was an idea, and I love ideas and I love trying something new, and so do you. So
yeah, perfect. And we love to chat. And yeah, you're right. There are becoming more and more podcasts for dance studio owners, but they're all about and they're all great, actually. I love them all, but often about a specific area and often about growing a dance studio. And you and I have both done that. We've been in the business for over 12 years. We've observed lots of changes during that time. We've learnt lots of lessons. And perhaps, this is effectively you and I nattering between exercises at the ballet bar, or better yet, sitting on a stool at the actual bar with a glass of bubbles, sharing our stories, our thoughts and our opinions. We're not claiming to be experts on anything apart from the fact that we've survived so far. We've still got our sense of humour so far.
Most importantly.
And I think you and I would both agree that it's better with friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you and I both connected online, which is an interesting way for a friendship to start. And I think the connection for us was that we both started our studios around the same time. We both have 3 children that are now growing. They were younger, but they're all getting older now. So we've been a little bit on the same path, I guess. And so our connection has been really solid around that. We both enjoy the same things. Our schools, although different, have very similar core values, and I think that's been part of the connection too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And we should point out that Melanie and I live in different states. So we're both in Australia, but Mel, you're in Victoria and I'm in South Australia. So we can pick up the phone if we need to. We don't very often because we're both busy, but it's not like we can just quickly have a cup of coffee and a chat. But I still feel very much supported by you from afar because I think there's just a level of understanding, and hopefully this is what will come out through the conversations we have online, is that there's a level of understanding. I can send you a quick 2-sentence message, via Facebook, and I know you get it. There's no justification or even context.
Some emoji sometimes.
Sometimes a bit of a poo emoji, you know. That's it. And you send back a heart and we're all good.
A heart or a picture of champagne.
Perhaps. So tell us about your school, and then I'll do the same, and then we'll dive into today's topic.
Yeah, sure. So I have, as I mentioned before, I've got 3 kids. Our studio is in Rosebud, which is on the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria, in Australia, for those of you listening overseas, assuming that there will be people
Australia. In Australia?
In Australia. I love coffee and I love the beach. We are near the beach where my studio is, so that's something that we really enjoy. My studio was actually founded in 1961 by the beautiful Sandra Allen, who still teaches for me. And I took over the studio in 2006 when my second child was born. So it was an interesting time with a toddler and a baby and taking on a new studio. But it's grown since then. We now have our own factory space, and it is my happy place. I love the door and getting inside that studio. I just love it.
And that's why we gel, because I feel, our stories have very similar paths. And, same. This is my 12th season. My school's here in Adelaide, South Australia. I too love coffee and I love the beach. I'm not as close to the beach as you are, but I can get to it, and I do. The studio is an extension of who I am, and I know that's true for you, and how we live our lives. And they're built around positivity, and the fact, I think this is the real clincher, the fact that when we walk into those studios, we know that what we're doing carries meaning and that it's powerful and that we're contributing to the development of the whole person. So that's, it's hard sometimes. Like you said, I've got 3 kids. They're quite demanding in their own way, and so they should be, and a growing school and our own premises. And sometimes it is, you wonder why you do it. But at the end of the day, I walk into the studio and I go, I've created this tribe that I know is impacting the community.
Absolutely. And I had a beautiful experience growing up at my dance studio. My teacher really created that community for me, and I feel so passionately about creating that for our students. And I know what she gave me was a gift, and that drives me really strongly just to see if I can try and do that. I love dance, but I love what dance brings to our community, and that drives me every day.
Yeah, and dance is the vehicle, isn't it? It's really just the method to reach these students and be part of their village. And as the world changes, our idea of villages need to change. And I know I've been to your studio and you've been to mine, and I know that when I walked into your studio, I felt very at home and very part of that village already, just because of the vibe. I love that word. The vibe.
You were applying a Band-Aid within about 5 minutes on
That's
someone.
right. Oh my goodness, I was on the first aid roster before I knew it. But I loved
at your place.
But I loved that. Yeah. So let's jump in to the topic that we've chosen for today, which is the idea of competition, and not in terms of dance comps, but in terms of, how we view competition in the marketplace, and how we use that either negatively or positively. So I actually see competition as a real positive force. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, well, for me, there's 2 things. There's competition with other people, but there's also competition within yourself. And so when I think about that, there's 2 very separate things there. And sometimes we can get caught up in competing with what we perceive other people want us to do, or what we should be doing, or, the Aussie phrase, keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
And that can get really tricky. I think we know that with social media now, it's so easy to see what people are doing.
Yeah.
That's when we started, back in, well, for both of us, it was around 2006. Facebook wasn't really a thing. All you could kind of really glean was from what people were doing in the local newspaper, which there's not really much information anyway. So, I think now it's really hard to stop yourself from getting into looking at what other people are doing and focus on competing with yourself. And that, for me, is the main thing. What can I do to improve what I'm doing within my studio, and not get distracted by the new shiny object, which we can be a bit guilty of, can't we?
Of course. And it is, sometimes being naive was better, wasn't it? Because we could swim in our own lane. That's the saying, like swim in your own lane, and don't look sideways, who's coming up behind you or who's next to you or who's in front of you. But now there's cameras in everybody else's lane and they're putting it in our Facebook feed, and it is hard to stay focused, and it is, I guess, natural for us to glance around and maybe sometimes not feel enough because we're competing. But I think when we play that game, we're always going to lose. We're always going to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's always someone that's doing something better or bigger or, what seems like it might be more interesting. But really that doesn't serve any purpose. On the flip side of that, I think one of the things that I was reflecting on before, we started this conversation was that there is also the element of, like you and I, for example, I will see something that you do and I think, oh, that's awesome. And I'll message you and go, thanks for that.
Getting that. Yeah, likewise.
So I think there are some good things about that, and we need to acknowledge that we draw inspiration from other people around us. The problem with that is that, and this is an observation I've made, is that when people see something and they think, oh, that looks like a great idea, I'm going to do that, and then off they go and might implement that idea into their studio. That idea might not fit their studio's core values or their studio's culture or where that studio's at.
Yes.
So I think we've got to be really careful when we're drawing inspiration from other people to really think about, is this relevant? Is it going to serve a purpose for me in my studio, my students, or what are our priorities right now? Because it's so easy to go, oh, look what Jane's done. That's amazing. I want to do that too, and get distracted, and then, we're off track all of a sudden.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And it has to be authentic, doesn't it? Because, I agree 100% with what you're saying. Because if it's not aligned with our why, then it really isn't going to serve us as well as it served the other person. But also, I think inspiration is one thing. Obviously, this might kind of segue into copycatting, which I don't want to use the word victim, but I think we know what I'm saying when I use that. I can't think of a better phrase, but, I've seen people copycatting me. Part of me, yes, is going, wow, I'm really glad that they've seen value in that and that they can apply it. But when it's a direct copy, I'm not going to lie, that peeves me, because everything I do is intentional, and so nothing is by accident. It's all completely by design. And so even, the copywriting on my Facebook page has had a huge amount of intention and drafts behind it. And look, if there have been a couple of times where it has been copied and pasted and I've seen it. And look, in those instances, I've followed up with that person just very gently and said, hey, just maybe change a few words there. Maybe, or just move the words around completely in a different order. And so that is a little bit tricky. But I think if we follow your advice, if we draw inspiration and then we look at molding it, if we like the idea, we look at molding it, we challenge it, we go, is this for us? And then I think it's great.
Yeah. And I think because I often see other studio owners, in different ways express their disdain or, their, what's the word?
Just frustration, shall we say?
Frustration at being copied. Yeah. And I certainly, I like you have felt the same and experienced some of the same things. But I would go back to thinking about, well, okay, that studio may have copied what I've done, but that is not necessarily going to serve them well, as you say, because it doesn't necessarily align with what they're doing at the moment. So we can get frustrated by that, but also know too that it's not necessarily going to have the same impact or be of the same value that your idea might have been in the first place.
Correct. Yeah. And
nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. We're human. We're emotional beings. Sometimes I'm too much of an emotional being. Just ask Brian, my husband. So it's
true. I mean, we're passionate people. Dance teachers and dancers in general are hugely passionate. I mean, we're all different, but generally our first responses can be very emotional to things, and that's okay too. Yeah. I think it's sometimes we've got to let ourselves go through those emotions and go, right, move on.
Yeah.
What am I going to do now?
Maybe just don't rant too much on Facebook publicly. That's always a bit embarrassing to read. And I've done it, so there's not a huge amount of judgment there from me, but I have regretted it later. What about, let's talk then about direct competition. So, because there's a bit of a catchphrase, there's more dance studios than ever. There's dance studios on every corner. And that can be said in America, that can be said here in Australia. So what do we do then? If there's a dance studio on every corner, that is our competition, or is it? This is my question.
Well, and I feel a bit the same. Or is it? Is it really competition, or is it really good for dance?
I think it's great for dance.
Because at the end of the day, I've got that mindset of abundance. I think there's enough people in the world. There's enough to go around for all of us.
There's always going to be babies, Miss Mel.
There's always going to be babies. And I think that's the thing, concentrate on bringing those people through your studio and attracting the customers that resonate with your core values from the beginning. We're not trying to, generally, my marketing and the people I'm trying to attract to my studio are those little babies, the 3 and 4-year-olds. And there's lots more of those coming.
Yeah.
The population is growing everywhere. It's not going downhill. So,
Yeah. And I agree. I think what we can do, rather than feel threatened, I love your abundance mentality and I share it completely. We are both annoyingly positive. But I think what we can do, rather than, think, oh my gosh, a new studio has just opened up, woe is me, the world's going to end, is use it as a motivation. And elevate what you're doing, focus now. Focus on what you do. You do you, and you do it really well. And don't, again, like you mentioned right back at the beginning, don't get distracted. Be authentic and use it as a driving force rather than thinking, oh, now they're doing that, so I better try that. And that new studio's got this, so I'm going to do that. No. Know your purpose. Know why you're there, what you're trying to serve. And do that and do it well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes back to what we were talking about before too, is just focusing in on one thing at a time, not getting distracted by, oh my goodness, there's a new studio, look at this, they've got, this new program happening, or they're doing this new awards program or whatever it might be, and then trying to scramble and do all of those things. And one thing I've learned is that you just pick one thing at a time and do that and refine it and do it well and then do the next thing.
Yes.
But otherwise you just end up going around in circles and feel like you're not achieving anything.
No, because you're probably not. Yeah. And one of my little sayings at the moment is do it better and you'll get bigger. So focus, rather than trying to get bigger than the studio at the end of the street, if that's your goal, if that's how you measure success, and that may be to begin with, it is about getting people in the door, but do what you do better than anybody else. And your customers, the right customers, will stay and they will tell their friends and you will get bigger. And the upside to focusing on that is that you will get the right customers. The more focused you are on you, the more you will create a niche. My studio is successful because it offers something that can't be shared down at the studio around the corner. It is different. It is unique, and I think that's really important, focusing on that uniqueness, that thing that is special about your studio.
Absolutely, because that's what keeps people there too. And we know from any kind of business growth is that you really want to keep those customers and keep that tribe that you've built happy and nurture them. And so sometimes we can get distracted by, I need more students, but we neglect then the students that are already with us. And maybe that's our next podcast. Talking about how do we actually nurture those students and keep them with us through the different periods of their education, their training, their growth. We all know when they get to teenagers that things change and evolve, and what are we doing throughout the studio to make sure that we're, keeping them with us and not losing them along the way.
I think that would be a great discussion to have, because often I see things in terms of marketing, not so much for dance studios, but for bigger businesses, perhaps like, the electricity company or something, that you sign up and you get the first 3 months free, or I can't think of an offer. In fact, my medical insurance, my health insurance had an offer for new members, and I was like, hey, what about me? I've been with you for 10 years, but the people that come in for 10 minutes get all the attention. I felt like maybe I would sign off and then sign up again. I don't know.
That is true, isn't it? That is so true. And I've actually experienced that within my studio a little bit too. We had an offer last year, which we did a really cheap deal of 4 classes for $20, and it was not. Look, we learn a lot from doing that, and we didn't necessarily attract the right customer. To our studio through that, but that was okay. We have to experiment, don't we?
Of course, it's all learning. Yeah.
But what I also found through that was that other people were commenting, well, how come they get that?
Yeah.
Can we get that deal too? So it sort of does, you're right, it does create a sense of, well, how come all the new customers are getting this special deal and we're not?
That's right, yeah. So, maybe we can flesh that out a little bit more. Just back to competition, and then we'll bring it to a close. Sometimes I see that people use competition as an excuse. So that whole, there's a studio on every corner. That's it. End of broadcast. That's why I'm not doing as well as I could be, because there's a studio on every corner. I was out yesterday going to some appointments, and I was stopped at the lights, and I looked to my right, and there, I kid you not, I got the giggles. There were 3 hairdressers side by side, okay? And next to the hairdresser, and they all looked quite nice, and I don't know how much variance there is in cutting hair, but they looked quite nice. And next to the hairdresser, there was a small kind of boutique gym, personal training gym. And then I turned my head to the left, and directly opposite that was another personal training gym. So I was thinking, come on, but perhaps that's not ideal, but in some ways they're working really hard, and that hairdresser that was in the middle of those two other ones, they could be sitting there in the middle going, my business is not as great as it could be because next door are so good. Or maybe your business is not as great as it could be because you haven't upskilled, your haircuts aren't very good, you don't offer tea or coffee to your clients, and next door offers champagne, or, whatever it is. Maybe sometimes we're using it as an excuse for our lack of success.
Yeah, totally. And I see that, I see comments often about, it's not, parents aren't like they used to be.
Yeah.
It's not like the old days. Well, no, it's not like the old days because it's 2018 now and this is the world we operate in. And parents' expectations have changed. And whilst we want to uphold the traditions of dance and all those sorts of things, we also have to evolve our businesses to make sure that we're talking to customers that in a relevant way. I mean, we can't stay stuck back in 1985.
No.
As much as, we
it's probably a pretty fun year for me. Come on, let's go back to 1985. Yeah.
Those fluoros. Yeah, but, it's. I think it's an excuse to say, to blame that things aren't like they used to be. Well, no, they're not, and they're never going to be.
And good businesses innovate.
Yes.
Constantly. And that's why it's exhausting, isn't it?
And fun too.
Yeah. Oh, look at you, back to Miss Positivity. Exhausting and fun too, she says. Yeah, no, look, I'm in agreement with you, but it's just nice to reflect on the idea, and like I said at the beginning, you and I are not claiming to be experts. We're certainly not claiming to always have all our ducks in a row, but these are just observations. And like I said yesterday, I was just sitting there. I mean, I don't know. I didn't go into these hairdressers and ask how they are. But I thought, well, there's no excuses there. If you're not performing, don't blame it on the person next door. Again, go back to your own lane. Look at what you want. Look at your why. Look at the impact that you're wanting to make and focus in. Really drill down in and, take responsibility for it.
Absolutely. Because, that's the only thing we can control.
Yes.
We can't control what other people do.
No, we can't. You're spot on. Yeah.
Idea.
Beautiful. Well, Miss Mel, I think it's probably time we wrapped the session up. So thank you for fleshing out some of those ideas with me. It was a great idea you had to chat and for people to listen. So hopefully it wasn't just you and I enjoying ourselves. I really do hope that if you were listening, you've enjoyed the conversation as well, and that maybe it has sparked some ideas or just some thoughts, and that we can do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks, Mel. Bye for now.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of our exclusive series At the Bar, powered by the Transform My Dance Studio podcast. For more training, resources and support specifically for dance studio owners who are wanting to grow their business while reclaiming their life, we'd love you to join us in the Dance Studio Owners Association. For all the information, go to dsoa.com. Take care and we'll see you next week.